Philippians 4:9 says this: keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. Keep doing these things that I've instructed you to do, and then the God of peace will be with you. Well, we hear that last line, that last sentence that Paul gives us in verse 9, and I think we could all sit at home right now and raise our hands and say, yes, I want to find that kind of peace. I don't know anybody in life who is looking to go about their entire journey with no peace. Our big key, the thing that we're going to be focusing in on this morning, is that obedience to Jesus brings peace to our souls. And so there's two sides to this coin, as there always is. If there is obedience that brings peace to our souls, if we're being obedient to Christ, and that is what can help us find peace, there's another side of that coin. And there's nothing that will disturb our hearts and our minds like disobedience. You see, disobedience is a disruption of our souls. When we're not moving in the same direction as Jesus, when we're not chasing after the things that Jesus has set out for us, we are moving in the other direction. There is no standing still. Obedience, we often correlate and put together with obligation. We begin to think of those chores that we had to do when we were kids that we just did not want to do. We begin to think of that 8 a.m. class in college that you just did not want to go to, but you were obligated to do so. We think sometimes that obedience and obligation go together. In the way that we are discussing obedience to Jesus, that's not the way that it is. It's a loving obedience. It's an obedience that we pursue after because we know it makes us better. We want to be obedient followers of Jesus. So these are three things that obedient followers of Jesus will do. Here's the first one. Obedient followers of Jesus want to learn. There is a wanting to learn. I know that if you are taking notes on the app that you are filling in those blanks right now, I would encourage you to take a screenshot of that. If you're taking handheld notes like I often do when I am tuning in, I want you to circle that word wanting because it is critical in this whole idea of learning more about Jesus. Because here's the reality, ladies and gentlemen, if I don't want to learn, I will always feel distant from Jesus. Paul said it in verse 9, keep putting into practice all you learned. You see, the church wasn't just receiving this knowledge so that they could hold on to it and just have it for themselves. They were supposed to begin to apply it, and there was supposed to be a yearning for more knowledge and to want to know more about this person named Jesus. I love the way that it's put in Colossians 1:28. So we tell others about Christ, warning everyone and teaching everyone with all the wisdom God has given us. We want to present them to God, perfect and mature in their relationship to Christ. We are never going to get through all of Scripture and go, you know what? This is good. I've figured it out for now. It doesn't work that way. It is a day-by-day process that we want to dig into. It's just like any healthy relationship that exists. The two parties want to get to know each other better because it makes the relationship even greater. But here's the second thing. They're willing to change. And this is where a lot of us are going to balk. This is where a lot of us are going to go, yeah, I don't know if this is going to be for me. Because as soon as somebody mentions the word change, we begin to think about everything in our lives that have to change, don't we? We know right from wrong. We know the things that we do that are great, and we know the things that we do that we probably shouldn't. And when somebody begins to point out and to call out things in our hearts and our lives that may need to change, we get very defensive. We don't like people pushing and prodding in certain aspects of our lives. This is where a lot of people stop when it comes to being a loving, obedient follower of Jesus. We're not called to just an ordinary life. We have the opportunity at immeasurably more through our relationship with Jesus. But to get there, sometimes we have to take an inward reflection of our own hearts and the things that go on and be willing to change. If we look at it as this huge thing that all has to happen at once, we get incredibly overwhelmed. It doesn't feel like we can take it all on, that God's not going to be able to use us because we've got too many things that need to change. It's a day-by-day process. Begin today. Begin to put some markers and some changes in your life that need to happen, and work on it today and again tomorrow and so on and so forth. So we know two things now. We know that obedient followers of Jesus want to learn and they're willing to change. But here's the third thing that obedient followers will do. They walk with mature believers. Walking with mature believers. Again, if you're taking those notes, I want you to circle that word, walking. Because for some of us that are tuned in today, it's time to put on our own shoes and quit watching everybody else. I think it's really easy sometimes to know the information, but applying it and living it, totally different. We've got to begin the process of walking in maturity and walking towards Jesus. And one of the greatest ways that we can do that is by walking with other mature believers that have been where we've been, and they can look you in the eye and say, I get what you're going through. I've been there myself, but you can make it. Never underestimate the influence that somebody can have on your own life and the influence that you can begin to have on somebody else's life through how you live.